Card D Kaizoku.
Alright, if I was gonna have a second game on the channel, I guess it might as well be the League of Legends trading card game. Yes, that's right, Project K is a League of Legends based trading card game, a physical one. It's different from their digital one. This video is going to be going over the rules of the game because that has been revealed recently. And yeah, special shout out to Willow for building out this mod in Tabletop Simulator, and then Dave Guskin for revealing the rules of the game to us. I believe he's the game's director, so even though we may not be getting this game anytime soon, right? It's releasing in China first in early 2025. There's no like current release date for any of the other languages. At least we have a digital way to just see how this game is going to be played. Alright, so in the Tabletop Simulator mod, the rules are displayed here, so we'll just go over it and I'll explain in further details if I feel like the explanation here doesn't make too much sense. So yeah, it's a 2 to 4 player game. I really only understand the rules for a one-on-one so far. I think there's some additional rules for when there's like more than 2 people that I haven't really looked into getting clarification on just yet. But yeah, goal of the game is just to get 8 points first, and then if you do, you win. And you do this by playing units, by playing gear, by playing spells, and then just controlling battlefields. So yeah, at the game's release, there's going to be 4 starter decks. There's going to be a Jinx deck, a Victor deck, a Yasuo deck, and a Volibear deck. They're all multicolored decks. So by the description here, Jinx is going to be like an aggressive kind of aggro deck that likes to conquer the battlefields. You discard a lot of cards to trigger a bunch of surprising effects and out crazy your opponents. Victor is more of like a control, go wide kind of deck. Those are 2 words that you don't really hear together. But yeah, it looks like it's kind of like a weenie deck. You generate a bunch of like small token characters or units. Then Yasuo looks more like mid-range, kind of tricky, according to the description. It looks like it's going to be moving between your base and your battlefields a lot to deliver attacks that your opponent doesn't expect it. And lastly, we have Volibear, who's going to be a controlling, go big, good at conquering and holding kind of deck. So it sounds like a ramp deck to me. Yeah, it saves up tons of runes to summon the huge armored bear and then other monsters to claw your ways to victory. So yeah, 4 distinct playstyles. We have an aggro deck, a weenie deck, mid-range deck, and then a ramp deck. The 4 kind of decks that you would want to get the power fantasies of, right, in a trading card game. So the deck building rules, you'll pick a legend. This will define the colors of your deck and the champion units you can choose. And then you choose 1 champion unit matching the name and one of the colors of your legend. And then you build a deck of 40 cards, max of 3 copy per card. And they have to fall within the colors of your legend card. And then you pick 3 battlefields, which are colorless, so you can pick any 3. And then in a single game, you'll play with one of these battlefields in a best of 3. And then in the best of 3, you'll go through all 3 battlefields. So let's go over what the legend cards are. So as we saw earlier, Victor was one of them. I'm going to refer to them by the color because I forgot the names of whatever these runes are. So blue, yellow, Victor. So you can pay 2 energy and then exhaust Victor, and then you can play a 1 might recruit unit token. So even from the legend card itself, you're able to create weenies every turn for 2 energy. Then we have Yasuo. So he is green and purple for 2 energy, and if you exhaust Yasuo, you can move a friendly unit to or from your base. We'll go over what that means in a bit. We have red purple Jinx. At the start of your beginning phase, you draw 1 if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand. And as we read earlier, this Jinx deck likes to discard cards in hand to get a lot of advantages, so this helps you refill your resources. And then lastly, we have red orange Volibear. When you play a unit with 5+ might, you may exhaust me to play your top rune exhausted. So you get ramp access through your legend ability. Right, playing something big just helps you play more big stuff the turns after that. And then you pick a champion unit matching the name and one of the colors of your legend. So if we were playing a Yasuo green purple deck, one of the champions you could pick would be this green Yasuo champion card. Right? It's differentiated from the legend. On the right, it says champion. This Yasuo says legend. So you can just set him aside when your game starts. This is like your guaranteed 1 card in your hand technically. It's not like a commander in Magic, right? It doesn't go back to the command field and you can replay it every turn. It dies like any other unit in your deck. It's just that you get it guaranteed in your opening hand, basically. And then for red purple Jinx, as another example, her deck actually has 2 options. So there's a purple Jinx here. There's also this red Jinx. So you can pick either one of these 2 to be your starting champion. And then for the battlefields, here's a list of all of them. So they all have different effects depending on whatever is printed on the card there. So it does vary the strategy that you would want to go for to conquer these battlefields. And this is how you'll score points too. Like for example, Windswept Hillock, any unit on this battlefield can freely move to another battlefield as if they had ganking without having to go back to your base first. So yeah, it introduces different avenues of how to play per round. And yeah, that's the deck building rules. So let's start a game just to see how it plays out. Let's start with Yasuo and a Jinx deck, yeah? So we'll set up real quick. Editor, cut this part out. And then for the runes, it doesn't specify in the rules, but it is 12 cards in your rune deck. This represents the 2 colors of your legend. And it can be in any ratio that you want it to be. I think by default it's 6-6. Right, so there's 6 green, 6 purple here. But yeah, if you wanted to do like a mono green deck, even though you're playing a dual color legend, I guess technically you can do that. Just have 12 green runes. Alright, we have the board set up. Let's get some shuffling going on here. Alright, so everything is shuffled. The first step is to draw 4 cards from your main deck. So we'll do that right now. I had to make all hands visible, so we'll draw 4 cards here. Then the next step is, let me move the rules somewhere I can access it easier. Determine the starting player by shuffling the battlefields and selecting one at random. That player goes first. So we both shuffle our battlefields. I'll add one to the middle, they'll add one to the middle. You'll shuffle these 2. And then the one that is revealed goes first. So let's say that this Yasuo picked this Targon's Peak. Then yeah, Yasuo goes first. We'll just assume that is the case. So these go into play. And these are kind of like the lanes in League of Legends, if you're familiar with how that game works. With 3, and then with additional players, you'll have 1 extra lane. So if there were 3 players, you'd have 3 lanes. If there's 4 players, the first one that gets picked gets thrown out. So there's max 3 lanes, even if there's 4 players. And then before the game begins, you can actually mulligan. So you do get to know what the battlefields are, so you can adjust your strategy accordingly. So this one, if you conquer this battlefield, you can pick 2 runes and then untap them at the end of your turn. Gives you access to energy to use for like reaction spells. This Windswept Hillock that we saw earlier lets you gank, so that may change up your strategy a bit. So from the 4 cards that we get, the mulligan rules, it's different from how other games mulligan, right? You don't shuffle your whole hand back. So you choose up to 2 cards to recycle, which is just bottom decking it, and then you can draw as many that you put on the bottom of your deck back. And you can only mulligan once per game. So let's say that we don't like this Madden Marauder. We can put it at the bottom of our deck, and then since we only return 1 card, we can only draw 1 card for our mulligan. And then, so that sets up the game. The last player plays an extra rune for their first turn, and then with 4 players, the first player also skips their draw phase, and then you proceed clockwise after that. So every turn you do get 2 runes from your rune deck. So in this case, since Yasuo is going first, we'll start with our rune phase. So 2 runes that we shuffled from our rune deck, and then we draw a card. Since it's 2 players, the first player still gets to draw, and then yeah, we're set up. So let's go over what the cards look like and then what they mean. So if we take a look at this Yasuo champion card here, the top left indicates the cost to play this card. The number indicates how much energy you need to rest, and then the 2 icons under that show how much might you have to return back to your rune deck, play it out. And yeah, just a heads up, I'm gonna apologize ahead of time for any like incorrect terminology. Kind of what I hate about picking up a new card game is just every card game has different terminology for all the same kind of actions, like resting, tapping, exhausting. It all means the same thing, right? They have words for runes, for power, for energy. They're all talking about the same thing, but in different ways. So it's a little bit confusing in that regard. So if we wanted to play this Yasuo out, we actually need 6 energy. So let's just, as an example, have 6 energy out. So to play this Yasuo champion here, we would need to exhaust all 6. And then in addition to that, we also need to recycle 2 power, and it specifically has to be green power here. So that means we take 2 of our green runes and then put them back on the bottom of our deck. So with that cost being paid, we can play out Yasuo into our base. He does come out rested. So all champions and units start out rested in your base. And yeah, that's how you play out a champion or a unit or even some of your gear. Now do note that not all cards have that recycle cost of the power, right? Some just have straight out energy costs. So it just depends on the card that you have. So just take a look at the top left. The stronger the card is, the more likely it's going to have like a recycle cost in addition to the energy cost. And that just sets you back like a turn or 2 of your runes. Next turn, you just get those 2 back. Could be 2 different ones too, right? We got 2 purple, even though we got rid of 2 green. So that's how that part works. What other details should we go over? So only active ready units can move. Since this is the beginning of the game, the first unit we play will go exhausted into our base. But if we already control the battlefield and you played another character out, let's say you played this Kane, you could actually play him exhausted into a battlefield you already control. And then spells do effects, then go to the trash. Gear stays in base. Do I have an example? So this is gear. You could have a Seal of Calm. This stays in your base. Every turn it gives you 1 of your green power. Instead of having to recycle your runes to do this, you can just tap this gear to give you that recycled cost. And then stuff like this spell, like meditation, once you play it, it goes to your discard. And then spells with reaction can respond to spells and abilities when they interact with you or your stuff, or in a showdown, which is what they call combat in this game, or when an epic is played. So yeah, this spell that we discarded is a reaction card. It can be used in response to one of your opponent's actions. And the way that the reactions work in this game is that it is a stack, right? The first card you played is resolved last. So the most recent card resolves first, and then it just goes in order from that. Similar to how it works in Magic, which is different from how it works in One Piece, actually. And yeah, those are the types of cards. So the steps of the turn, let's just say, the board state may not make sense for this, but just to illustrate it. So you ready any exhausted units or runes from the last turn. So let's untap everything. And then you score a point for each battlefield you control. So we don't control any at the moment. Controlling just means having a unit on it that survived whatever combat there was last turn. So in this case, well, let's just say for illustration purposes, we control this Windswept Hillock with this Yasuo. We would score a point here in this case. And this is what you call a hold. And then you resolve any start of turn or hold abilities. And I don't think we have any. So let's just skip that. You draw a card from your main deck, and then 2 runes from our rune deck, and that is how your turn starts. And then you can start moving your units onto battlefields. So if you wanted to move this Kane to this Targon's Peak, you move him there, and then you'd have to exhaust him. And then when you conquer a battlefield, meaning that there's no current unit or champion already on that battlefield, you do get a point for conquering it. And then if your opponent did have like a unit on there, so let's say there was already a Jinx on there from their last turn, this is where the combat would start. You can only score each battlefield once per turn. So that means either conquering it or taking control over it from your opponent, right? You can't score on the same one twice a turn. Units cannot move between battlefields unless they have ganking. So if Yasuo was here and I wanted to move him to here to help fight the Jinx, I would have to spend a turn moving him back to base, and that would exhaust him. And then on my next turn, I can move him to Targon's Peak. But again, in this particular case, since this battlefield gives ganking to any unit here, he could just, if he was untapped, directly go to here and then help fight the Jinx here. And then once you take a battlefield, you control it. As long as you have units there, you can hide 1 card with hidden on that battlefield as a nasty surprise. But if you lose control of the battlefield, you discard the hidden card. Let me try to find an example of one. All right, so let's say we controlled Windswept Hillock, and then I couldn't find a green or purple hidden spell, but let's say we had Hidden Blade, which is a hidden spell for yellow. So you can either play this as like a main spell for 2 rested energy and then 1 returned yellow power, or you could play its hidden cost. So if you control a battlefield, you can play this face down in that battlefield for 1 returned, I believe that's any rune color. That's the like multicolor symbol, I think. And then if you do that, you can play it as a reaction here on a later turn for 0 energy. This lets you kill a unit, add a battlefield, and then its controller draws 2 cards. So we could play that face down in this Witchy Hillock on a later turn. We can, for 0 energy, just pop a unit here. Okay, so going on to combat. So let's go over this example where this Kane is attacking this Jinx on this Targon's Peak here. So resolve any when I defend abilities, then any when I attack abilities. Either player can use reactions at this point. So Kane does not have anyone attacking, nor does Jinx or anyone defending. So it just proceeds as normal. And then we, at this point, if we have like open runes that we could use, we could play spells. If it had reaction, that is. So let's say we had this Discipline in hand. It's a 2-cost reaction. So at this point, we could pay 2 energy, right? There's no power cost, so we don't have to return any specific runes to the bottom of our deck. Pay 2 purple. We could play Discipline. This adds 2 might this turn, and I draw a card. So we draw a card from our deck, and then our Kane gets +2 might, and then the might is indicated on the top right of the card. So Kane has 6 might to begin with. plus 2, that is 8. And then we check against the enemy's might. So this Jinx has 5 might. We actually didn't need to play anything to kill this Jinx. But then Jinx can also respond with her own cards. But I just drew like 20 cards and I don't see any reaction. So I'm guessing Jinx is not a reaction-based deck. So in this case, how does it resolve? Then fight. Each player sums their might, then divides that total as damage to opposing units. Any unit assigned damage greater than its might dies, and at the end of combat, units that didn't die return to full health. So since there's only one unit on both sides of this, Kayn deals enough to take out the Jinx, so Jinx dies. And then Kayn having 8 might at this point means that he lives. So Jinx dead. And then if only attackers live, take control and score. If defenders live, they stay, and living attackers go back to base. So since we were able to kill the Jinx, we score. We take over this base here. And that's basically combat. So we just do stuff like this until you get to 8 points. Now, we can have multiple units onto a battlefield. So let's say that same example, we have Jinx here, and then who else should we have? Another Jinx, the red one. So if it was this combat, so this Jinx has 5 might, this Jinx has 4 might. That's 9 total. And then Arcane in this case had 8 might. So we don't have enough to kill both. You assign how you want to split the damage. So let's say we want to do 5 to this one. And then with the remaining 3, we'll do it to this one. So this Jinx dies. And then since this Jinx lives, we don't take control of this battlefield. So we did not gain a point there. And then our attacker has to go back to our base after this. So they still control it. And then when it passes back to their turn, at the start of the turn phases, they'll gain a point when they hold onto this battlefield here. And yeah, that's basically the flow of things. And then the way you win is you get 8 points, but the caveat is that unlike other points, the winning point can't come from a conquer. So you can't be at 7 points. And then like if there was an empty battlefield here, you can't just conquer it for that 8th point. And then in this case, if you were to try to conquer, but you're at 7 points and you can't gain anymore, you just draw a card instead. And then the way to win, to get that 8th point, is that you either have to hold and score from holding a battlefield for that 8th point, or you must score from all battlefields in a single turn. So in this case, we would have had to conquer here. So Yasuo can conquer this. Then we can move Kayn here to do combat with this Jinx. And then let's say that they had no more reactions in their hand to defend this Jinx. Jinx would die. And since we scored a point from each battlefield this turn, we can win that way. Or conversely, let's say we controlled these two and then it was not the point needed to win the game, right? Let's say this gets you to 7 points on your opponent's turn. If they're unable to remove your Kayn, because you have reactions that can like buff him. And this, since it was an unsuccessful attack, it dies. And then on your turn, start of the turn, you untap everything. You draw a card, you get 2 runes. At this point, since we control both of these, we get a point for holding them. And then we win this way as well. And that's pretty much the game loop. I'm sure there's more intricacies depending on the effects of the cards that I'm gonna have to like actually play a match to learn. But yeah, it seems pretty straightforward. There's some interactions that are kind of peculiar that I looked up ahead of time, like this Tryndamere here. So we mentioned that like you can't win off a conquer for that 8th point for the rules. This Tryndamere, when they conquer after an attack, if you assign 5 or more excess damage to one of your opponent's units, you score a point. You can win that way actually. Not from the conquer, but from like the card effect of this Tryndamere. So there's some nuances like that you're gonna have to like just learn as you read all the cards. But yeah, I'm excited to try this game out. It looks pretty interesting. It's like both familiar yet kind of different from the existing games that I've played. So excited to learn what this game has left to explore in design space. And of course, excited to see some of my favorite champions be made into cards. Right, I'm going to be maining Syndra whenever Syndra is released. And yeah, I guess that's it. Let me know if you guys have any questions on the rules. I have a bunch of questions too, so there's a bunch of time until this game releases for us to have those questions answered and for us to learn. So we just have to see when that time comes. Yeah, until then, hope this video helped you understand how this game is going to be played. Maybe it convinced you to start or get invested into this game. Hope you're excited for more Project K videos on this channel. And yeah, if you're a new viewer, I've mainly been doing One Piece card game content up until now, but I'm branching into Project K. So if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. There'll be more to come. And then, I don't know, if you're interested in the One Piece card game at all, or want to get interested in it, check out my One Piece card game videos too. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye. Please write Syndra, please. I want a Syndra deck.
Card D Kaizoku.